in the darkest shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and bold.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Stigmata Studios presents The Jinn Jihad. The Jinn Jihad kicks your face with myths, mysteries, epic battles, suicide bombers, quirky characters, and divine power armor. In this epic graphic novel, the warrior archangels descend on a city in chaos. It's all-out war. The non-standard assembly battles an ancient terrorist organization and their ultimate weapon, a corrupted, magically enhanced, unstoppable monster, the Jinn. This graphic novel is a wild ride. It's one part distant Arab myth, one part Old Testament angelic vengeance, and one part unique heroic tough guys. Available on Amazon. Get more info on the Jinn Jihad and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
No, man, I got lit up. Some social justice warrior gave me a 1-star review and lashed out at me. Well, if you believe in white privilege and you think I'm white, if I have white privilege, then you're gonna fucking love this. The worst is like they start and then they just like they're arguing, like they're imagining your retort, so it's like they just keep going and going and they're actually just kind of arguing with themselves. This is funny. Anyhow, that's the end. I'm not dignifying it with any more of an answer. Talk to me, baby, talk to me.
The Abracast. Occult. History. Conspiracy. Violence.
Where is my goddamn pen? Oh, shit. Where is my goddamn pen? Welcome to the Abracast, everybody. I'm John Towers. I'm your host, John Towers. I wasn't going to do this episode. It's unplanned. It's not on the calendar, but the world is exploding. And it's exploding, and I thought that since we have been talking about media manipulation, that this could be a huge teachable moment. So this episode is not about politics. We are not going to be talking about the Flores settlement. We are not going to be talking about the immigration policy of any presidents. We're not in depth. We're not going to be talking about any of the politics. We're talking about the media in this episode. We're talking about the media, and they're biased at best and their weaponizing of the media at worst. So that's just the trigger warning. And I know, I have a feeling that some of you guys don't like these kind of episodes or whatever, but I have to assure you it is not about politics. This is about the media. Before I get started, I'd like to encourage everyone to rate and review the show. If you learn something, if I make you laugh this evening, I'd like to encourage you to rate and review the show. What is it? Carpe diem? No, it's Carpe Noctem. Seize the night. Check out the website. We got the binge. This streaming every episode of the Abercast ever is on abercast.com. You go to it's all right there, all on one page. You could just binge. You could click through, listen to them all. You can find links to my social media on the bottom of the website. Also, stigmatastudios.com. They both go to the same place, but I try to make it easy. Also, at the bottom, you can find links to my Patreon account. Not a whole lot going on there on the Patreon account. That's that. But I do want to tell you guys about it because the main goal right now is I want to launch a modest Books for Soldiers program. I'm linked in with 2 organizations that do this. I just need help gathering up some books and to pay for shipping and all that stuff, P.O. boxes and whatnot. And it's really just also an excuse. It's a front. I'm throwing up a front because I want to get some mason jars with the pledge printed on them and some T-shirts and shit. So that's my trick. That's my reason to do it. Last month, I think we did an episode on the media, the retailers of agenda, where we broke apart comments made by Obama administration official Ben Rhodes on how he point blank during an interview talked about how he was able to manipulate the media. But this theme that we're tracking, this media theme, goes back probably towards the beginning of the show. I did a Project Mockingbird episode. We did. We've talked about this media thing before. Why can't I remember? I told you I don't have any notes in front of me. I had the articles we're going to read, but that's it. So, yeah. So we are tracking this media. The media is a theme of the show, specifically media manipulation. So that is what this is about. Again, I just want to say this is not politics. This is about the media, and let's be adults and separate ourselves from the politics and just hear me out and listen. I'm gonna show you guys some shit. So yeah, look, man, I've done this fast. It's not even 10 minutes in yet. We're gonna get into this. Maybe it's even gonna be a short little bonus episode for this week. So at the end of May, there was a article that came out showing little kids in cages, and this article was all about Trump. Trump's policy of separating kids from their parents and locking them up in cages. Okay, so I'm going to acknowledge this, but I have to say we're not talking about immigration policy. We're not talking about the Flores settlement. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about the difference between asylum seekers and immigrants and what 20-day holding periods are and what are you supposed to do with the kids while the people that broke the law are in these 20-day holding periods. We're not going to get into any of that stuff because if you just read enough about it, your common sense will be like, oh, yeah. Are you supposed to lock the kids up with the parents? Are you supposed to forget the rule of law and let the parents go with the kids? Because that's eventually what winds up happening. Anyhow, so that happened at the end of May. And then on June 5th, I think, Seymour Hersh was on NPR, and they were talking. Seymour Hersh is the liberal journalist. He was the guy who gave he gave the world the stories about this massacre in the Vietnam War, where Americans supposedly killed hundreds of Vietnamese citizens, and he was the guy that broke the story on Abu Ghraib, where I don't have to say apparently after this, because they were mistreating prisoners and stuff at Abu Ghraib. So he's the guy that gave the world these stories, and he was on NPR, and they asked him about Trump. And he was like, well, nothing's sticking to Trump. He's just, he's going through, everyone loves talking shit on him. I'm paraphrasing, of course. Everyone loves talking shit on him, but nothing sticks to him. What they have to do is they have to exploit. They have to start telling these stories about what's going on with these kids on the border. That's what they need to do to damage Trump. And I don't have to point out, it's everywhere right now. It's fucking everywhere you go. It's this story about these kids getting separated from their families at the border. It's on Fox News. It's on CNN. It's on C-SPAN. It's everywhere. It's hard to find. It's hard to find. Actually, it's not hard to find news about it before because I found many articles dealing with the same exact thing, maybe even more diabolical from past administrations, namely Obama's. Now, a lot of people are going to instinctively knee-jerk reaction turn this podcast off right now because I just said this, but just hang tight. Hang tight. So, what we're talking about is kids being separated by their parents for immigration issues. So it's not, I'm acknowledging this is not talking about kids getting separated by their parents coming into the country temporarily, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. The issue that I'm talking about is parents being separated from their kids. We see it happening right now. We all see it happening, and hardly any of us understand why. But anyhow, just hang tight. So I'm going back in time. We're going. First, I should invite everyone to grab their mason jars and mix up a gin jihad for this evening, and settle down into a comfy chair. Kick your shoes off and let's go on this ride, this gin jihad ride. Obama tearing families apart, immigration activists decry. June 5th, 2014. This was on The Hill, wearing blue t-shirts that reads, Obama deports parents. More than a dozen young immigration activists blocked traffic near the White House on Thursday as they protested President Obama's deportation policy. The protesters are upset that Obama and the Department of Homeland Security to delay the deportation policy review, a move they fear will deport parents who are illegal immigrants while their children remain in the U.S. One of the protesters, Onika Johnson, broke into tears as she told the story of her father, Dave, who was arrested in New Jersey last week by Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials and sent back to Jamaica. What part of Jamaica are you from? The part by the beach. Oi! Despite the fact that his 4 children are U.S. citizens and he had lived in the nation without criminal record for 17 years. Because Obama waited, my dad is in Jamaica fighting for his life, Unika said. And it's not right. Now he's separated from his kids. Garissa Martinez, another protester, accused Obama of tearing families apart. I want the same protections that I have for my mother. Martinez said, we need relief for our parents today. We need relief for our parents right now. So, do you guys remember this from the summer of 2014? Were there clueless celebrities adding their 2 cents to stories on Twitter about the inhumanity of ripping children away from their families? Not at the border. Not at the border. Deporting parents who have been here crime-free for 17 years, sending them back to Jamaica, man. The park by the beach. Oi. Do you remember the public outcry of these tactics of tearing these immigrant families apart from 2014? I don't think you do. Let's see the next one. There's literally there's literally 7 of these, because as I'm pointing out, the media was pretty quiet about it. I just saw an article on Facebook earlier that was like, oh, an Obama administration officials admit that we kept the child separation policy pretty quiet back in those days. Deportation separated thousands of U.S.-born children from parents in 2013. This, again, is from June 25th, 2014, so this is 20 days after the first article. And this is not from The Hill. This is not from, InfoWars. This is from the fucking Huffington Post. You see what I'm saying? It's from the Huffington Post. So we get this thing where all these media fronts and organizations are giving cover to Obama. The reason that you're going to see that this is written, and it's secretly written in a positive kind of light. It's like, hey, look at this, but you see what I'm saying? Because Obama came off weak as far as immigration is concerned. So this is Huffington Post giving cover to Obama for his immigration weakness by saying, hey, look at this guy, he's a beast, he's ripping these children away from their parents. And this is in 2013. So here we go. This is by Elise Foley, again, the Huffington Post. If you don't believe in liberal bias in the media, if you think all journalists are even and pragmatic, you have to admit that that's not the case with the Huffington Post. They are so out of balance. Anyhow, Washington, Immigration and Customs Enforcement last year carried out more than 72,000 deportations of parents who said that they had U.S.-born children, according to reports to Congress obtained Wednesday by the HuffPo. The reports were sent by ICE in April to the Senate Appropriations Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee as required by law. ICE confirmed the authenticity of the 2 reports. Sorry. I'm apologizing to my recorder. Which lay out 72,410 removals of immigrants who said they had 1 or more U.S.-born children in 2013. These reports show that even parents of U.S. citizens are among the hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants being expelled from the United States each year. They hold particular significance as President Barack Hussein Obama faces pressure to change his deportation policies to keep families together. Obama's deportation policies are under increased scrutiny by those in both political parties as the House stalls on immigration reform and the government scrambles to deal with an influx of unaccompanied minors across the U.S. border illegally. While opponents of immigration reform have argued that Obama's lax enforcement is attracting new, unauthorized immigrants. Look at the hoops they jumped through just to say not have to say illegal immigrants, attracting new unauthorized immigrants. Reform advocates are turning to the White House to slow deportations, while most of the parents of the U.S.-born children deported last year have been convicted of a crime. About 10,700 had no criminal convictions, although they may have fit other ICE priorities for removal, according to the report. So what do we just read? About 11,000 had no criminal convictions, but they may have had other ICE priorities for removal. So going on, ICE said 71,214 parents of U.S.-born children who were deported fit its priorities. These priorities include convicted criminals, people caught attempting to enter the country illegally, people who had returned after a previous deportation, and people who failed to report to ICE. After a deportation order, according to the report, because some people may have been deported more than once. The figure reflects total removals, not the exact number of individuals who were deported. So what that means is the numbers do not include deportations of parents who fail to tell agents they have U.S.-born children, or parents whose foreign-born children are undocumented. So just to unpack these last couple lines here, because they are deceptive. I understand that you guys know, but I just for my own sanity, here we go. The exact number of individuals, because some people may have been deported more than once. The figures reflect total removals, not the exact number of individuals who were deported. So this is like when you hear stories about these kids muling drugs, and they're like, we've kicked this 18-year-old back to Mexico 60 times. That's a number. We're actually going to get to that story in a little bit. But the other unstated deceptiveness here is the numbers do not include deportation of parents who fail to tell agents they have U.S.-born children, or parents whose foreign-born children are undocumented. So the flip side of this that they are not bringing attention to is that these numbers of parents who are being kicked out of the country, the only qualification they have for being called parents of U.S. citizens is a say-so. It's just they say it. They self-identify. They're like, yeah, I have kids. Yeah, my kid is a U.S. citizen. That's what I'm saying. They fail to tell agents they have U.S.-born children. So if they tell agents they have U.S.-born children, that's where that number is coming from. So if you think that you might get preferential treatment, or you might be allowed to stay if you say that you have a U.S. born child and you're here illegally, when you try that, when you give it a shot, when you throw it against the wall to see what happens, I'm saying I might. Now remember, this isn't about being stopped at the border. This is about the fake, I'm going to say fake outrage. That's not really what I mean. I mean, these people are probably outraged, but they're outraged because of their own, their just own stupidity. But they weren't outraged when Obama was in office. See, that's the crux of it. That's what should tell you something. So those couple articles were pretty crazy, but it's going to get way crazier. Mexican kids held for months as punishment for border crossings. This is not InfoWars. This is not Abercast.com. This is Joshua Partlow, March 11th, 2015, in the Washington Post. Mexican kids held for months as punishment for border crossings. Laredo, Texas, last spring, as Central American children flooded into Texas in ways he had never seen in his 3-decade career, Border Patrol agent Robert Harris decided to do an experiment. His intelligence analysts estimated 78% of the guides smuggling other migrants were Mexicans younger than 18. Teenagers often hired or conscripted by drug cartels that knew that they would not be prosecuted if caught. And he wanted to attack this loophole. Why don't we remove these juveniles from the smuggling cycle? Harris, the outgoing commander of the Laredo sector of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, remembered thinking. I'm just going to skip to the end. Now, as a result of this decision, young Mexicans are being held for months without charge in shelters across the United States. This is actually against the law. The only reason they're allowed to do this is because they're not citizens of the United States. They're young Mexicans are being held for months without charge. That's not saying that they don't have people in charge of them. That's saying that they are not in the legal system. There's no charges leveled against them. They're just being locked up. I don't remember the people freaking out about this in 2015. I don't remember having to read tweets from a man that I guess I respected at some point, Ron Perlman, fucking Hellboy. I don't have to read tweets about Hellboy. Him showing off his bias and how stupid he is. I shouldn't say stupid. Uninformed. I'm sure they're passionate. I'm sure they think that they're doing the right thing. We're going to get into all this. I got to stop. Sometimes without their parents' knowledge. They're saying that they were locked up without their parents' knowledge. These parents don't know where these kids are. They're just locked up somewhere in a black site in America. Since the program began in May, 536 juveniles have been held, 248 of whom have been deported to Mexico after an average of 75 days, according to Border Patrol statistics. Mexican authorities say some of these repeat border crossers have spent as much as 6 months in the U.S. custody. 6 months in U.S. custody while they awaited an appearance before an immigration judge. I don't remember reading a tweet from Ron Perlman back in 2015 about holding Mexican minors in prisons across the United States. I don't remember that. Did it happen? Did Patton Oswalt weigh in on this total disregard for human rights? Did he? Did Patton Oswalt do that and I missed that tweet? This gin cannot get into my body fast enough. Okay, so this is the craziest one. Here, I'm going to take a break before that. All right, stay tuned for the craziest one. Is that the craziest one? Yeah, this is going to be the craziest one. So hang tight, and then I'm going to get to the craziest one. It's called Obama Administration's Placed Children with Human Traffickers. This is from the Washington Post. This isn't InfoWars. This isn't Abercast.com. The fucking Washington Post. Obama administration placed children with human traffickers. The Obama administration placed children with human traffickers, report says. The Obama administration failed to protect thousands of Central American children who have flooded across the U.S. border since 2011, leaving them vulnerable to traffickers and abuses at the hands of government-approved caretakers. A Senate investigation found, remember, this is back in 2016, the Office of Refugee Resettlement and the Agency of Department of Health and Human Services failed to do proper background checks of adults who claimed the children allowed sponsors to take custody of multiple unrelated children and regularly placed children in homes without visiting locations, according to a 56-page investigative report released Thursday. And once these children left federally funded shelters, the report said the agency permitted their adult sponsors to prevent caseworkers from providing them post-relief services. Senator Rob Portman initiated the 6-month investigation after several Guatemalan teens were found in a dilapidated trailer park near Marion, Ohio, where they were being held captive by traffickers and forced to work at a local egg farm. The boys were among the more than 125,000 unaccompanied minors who have surged into the United States since 2011, fleeing violence and unrest in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. It is intolerable that human trafficking, modern-day slavery, could occur in our own backyard, Portman said in a written statement. What makes this Marion case even more alarming is that the U.S. government agency was responsible for delivering some of these victims into the hands of these abusers. The report concluded that the administration policies and procedures are inadequate to protect the children in the agency's care. HHS spokesman Mark Weber said in a statement that the agency would review the committee's findings carefully and continue to work to ensure the best care for the children we serve. The report was released ahead of a hearing Thursday before the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, which Portman co-chairs with Senator Claire McCaskill. It detailed nearly 30 cases where unaccompanied children had been trafficked after illegal officials released them to sponsors where they were serious trafficking indicators. HHS places children with individuals about whom it is known relatively little and without verifying the limited information provided by sponsors about their alleged relationship with the child. Again, this is this verification by self-identification. So the first time I ran into this self-identifying as something skewing numbers, I'm not even going to get into that. I'm not going to get into it. I'm sorry. I'm not. I just. For example, what is that? What the fuck? I'm sorry. For example, one Guatemalan boy planned to live with his uncle in Virginia, but when the uncle refused to take the boy, he ended up with another sponsor who forced him to work nearly 12 hours a day to repay the $6,500 smuggling debt, which the sponsor later increased to $10,900, the report said. A boy from El Salvador was released to his father even though he'd told a caseworker that his father had a history of beating him, including hitting him with an electrical cord. In September, the boy alerted authorities that his father was forcing him to work for little or no pay. The report said a post-release service worker later found the boy was being kept in a basement and given little food. The Senate investigation, I mean, do you remember Patton Oswalt weighing in on this one? Basically, the U.S. government handing these kids over to slavery. Do you remember that? Do you remember Ron Perlman weighing in on this one? The Senate investigation. I'm sorry. I'm fucking revved up. I'm livid about this fucking shit. The Senate investigation began in July. I mean, why lock kids up? Why keep them in some kind of fucking detention center? Because you can't. What are you going to do? You're going to give them back to some relative here that fucking sells them into slavery? I mean, who knows? This fucking article doesn't say anything about sex workers or anything like that, but just imagine that can of worms. Fucking just imagine it. You don't see Olivia Benson talking about this. The Senate investigation began in July after federal prosecutors indicted 6 people with a connection to the Marion labor trafficking scheme, which involved at least 8 minors and 2 adults. Oh boy, from the Huehuetenango region of Guatemala. I'm sorry, I don't speak Guatemalan. One defendant, Aroldo Castillo Serrano, 33, used associates to file false applications with the government agency tasked with caring for children, and then bring them to Ohio, where he kept them in squalid conditions in a trailer park and forced them to work 12 hours a day, at least 6 days a week, for little pay. Castillo Serrano has pleaded guilty to labor trafficking charges and awaits sentencing in the Northern District of Ohio in Toledo. The FBI raided the trailer park in December 2014, rescuing the boys, but the Senate investigation says federal officials could have discovered the scheme far sooner. August 2014, a child welfare caseworker attempted to visit one of the children who had been approved for post-release services because of a reported mental health problems, according to the report. The caseworker sent to the address listed for the child, but the person who answered the door said the child didn't live there, the report added. When the caseworker finally found the child's sponsor, the sponsor blocked the caseworker from talking to the child. Instead of investigating, the caseworker closed the child's case file and the report said, citing ORR policy, which states the post-release services are voluntary and sponsor refuse services. That child was found months later living 50 miles away from the sponsor's home and working at the egg farm, according to the report. The child's sponsor was later indicted. Do you remember when Chuck Schumer took to the press to talk about these kids being given to slavers? Do you remember that? Do you remember when Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi got together in a shared press conference to talk about how they were going to review this and do everything they could to stop these kids being handed over to egg collecting slavers? Do you remember when that happened? I don't remember when that happened. Look, I think it's obvious. You know, I'm not advocating taking children away from their parents. I'm not advocating putting children in cages, obviously. That picture is from 2014, but and I'm not a product of one broken home. I'm a product of many broken homes. Both of my parents have been married and divorced numerous times, and I know how traumatic that can all be. So, I am not advocating for all that stuff. If you ask me what the answer to all this situation is, besides saying, well, put up the wall, so these people, these guys, I don't want to say these people, but like the people that are drawn to roll the dice to make it into this country, make that dream less realistic for them, so they stop bringing these children across South America and Mexico to try to get here. I mean, that's really to me, that's really the answer. Because you wind up in sticky legal situations like this when you don't do that. It's unrealistic to be like, okay, well, okay, well, we'll let you go, and then you got to show up for your immigration court hearing and just let them loose. Like that's crazy. Another thing that none of these things have talked about, except for one of those articles that I read earlier, did mention that there was a flood of unaccompanied children coming. So it's like, we don't know those numbers. Like, that's not transparent either, and the news isn't reporting that. How many of these kids are showing up unaccompanied? And then when we do something with them, how is that the wrong thing to do? You know what I mean? Like, these children show up unaccompanied. Somebody has to do something with them. Are those kids being counted as kids that are being taken away from their parents? Those kids were taken away from their parents when they got put on these buses and these trains, to go. It was the article that had to do with Laredo. Just going back in my mind and thinking about it. So obviously I'm not advocating any of this stuff, and I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong, but I'm strictly just pointing out that when the media blows up and makes a big deal out of this, but totally ignores what came directly before it. And I mean, honestly, I'm not saying this to be contrarian, but being given to slavers inside the United States is worse than being put in some kind of juvenile detention center here while you're waiting to figure out what's going on with you. Being sent to an abusive, physically abusive relative is worse than being put in some kind of detention center or something, some kind of system designed for minors. And I'm aware of the reports out there saying, well, they have TVs, so they should be good. I understand that is inaccurate. But I'm saying there is no easy answer. The easy answer is put the fucking wall up. That's the easy answer. I know not a whole lot of people want to hear that, but that's the fucking easy answer. Make it impossible for people to sneak into this country so they stop bringing their fucking minors here to try to do it. Again, I don't want to get into the Flores settlement. I don't want to get into the difference between asylum seekers and illegal immigrants and what that difference means to the people that these people are bringing with them. The minors they're bringing with them is totally different, especially since 2016. There was a federal judge who ruled that the Flores settlement was over families. It was over all the people, all the family unit accompanying the people as well. So, I mean, that's enough. You guys can go look at the Flores Agreement. I don't see that bandied around. I don't see a lot of people talking about that. So, you might want to check it out. I'm sure you can find some fun stuff about it. If you want to butch up and get some battle strategies, battle tactics lined up to combat some of this craziness. I mean, that's a pretty good place. That's a pretty good place to start. So, I have one more article that I'm going to read, but I'm going to wait till the end to read it. So we're gonna wrap it up, and then I'll read this last article if you guys want to hang in. It's called "How Liberals Got Lost on the Story of Missing Children at the Border." This was published May 31st, 2018 by the New York Times, which is a bastion of liberal thought. And I'm not saying that unironically. So, I felt that this was a great way to end the show because it is a liberal newspaper and they are talking what we're talking about. We're talking about what this episode is about, and it's not about the politics. It's about how the reporting, how the passion really took control. You know, we didn't even mention, you know, my favorite thing is, through this whole thing is, well, does anyone remember Elian Gonzalez? I mean, come on. But, so I would like to encourage everybody to rate and review on iTunes. Like to encourage everybody to go to, stigmatastudios.com or, abercast.com. Check out the new feature we have over there where all the streaming, everything is all on that one page for everybody. And Patreon, do the Patreon, and you know it's gonna be a short episode, but like I said, it wasn't planned. It's not on the calendar. It was just all this stuff just drove me crazy today. So I went out and I found some examples of I found some examples of how the media dealt with these kind of things in the past. And I don't feel like I need to produce a whole bunch of examples about how celebrities and people are really going crazy retweeting this and social mediaing this, because I'm sure you are all seeing it. You're all seeing what I'm seeing. You know, we just need to add some, you know, the show is really good at adding context to stuff. It really is. You know, that's like one of my main things is you know, you listen to podcasts, they just jump in and they just throw stuff out there like you're supposed to fucking mean what you're supposed to fucking understand what it means. And they don't bother putting stuff in context. So that's really what this whole episode is about, putting this media reaction into context about what's going on. Again, I'm not trying to be a Trump apologist. I'm not trying to blame the Obama administration or, you know, Bill Clinton or whatever. I know I'm good for that all the time, but really just want to focus on the media, how the media reacted to this, and how everyone has took it as a launch off point for just pure emotion, just knee-jerk, just emotion. While I was talking on the podcast, I just flipped through my social media account and saw people just being like, even Nazis let the Jews have their kids, and look, even Nazis didn't torture these Jewish children or something. I'm like, the world is just gone just crazy because it doesn't seem like people understand how to consume this media. The media is not journalism anymore, and the faster that we realize that, I think the better off everyone's going to be. Everyone's sanity, everybody's everything is just going to be better as soon as we just realize, and I think it's happening, man. I think it's super close to happening. So I just fucking rolled the dice, and I'm like, I'm just going to throw my 2 cents into this thing and, you know, see what happens. So, thank you guys for listening. If you stick in to the end of the show, I'll get into this article. It's by this lady, Amanda Taub, at the Liberal Bastion, the New York Times. So it's a super interesting article. Can't wait to share it with you guys. So, if you hang in with me, then thank you. And if you don't, then hasta la vista, baby. I will see you next week, for a regularly scheduled show. Big show.
Stigmata Studios presents The Scorpion Strikes. In this comic book, a terrorist called the Scorpion is transported to a secret CIA prison. He quickly turns the tables on the guards and administrators and releases the prisoners. A well-armed anarchist called Constituent Zero assembles a team and fights to take the prison back. This story is a dark political action thriller. The Scorpion's actions set the stage perfectly for the Jin Jihad. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, The Jin Jihad, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com. Stigmata Studios presents The Test of the Scorpion. In this comic book, while the Jin Jihad is raging on one side of the city, the terrorist called the Scorpion sets a secondary attack in motion as he obtains a small tactical nuclear bomb. A mysterious, ever-living warrior called Cyrus the Dead Guy steps forward to test the faith of the Scorpion and his lunatic followers. This is an action-adventure story. It's a bit of swashbuckler that wraps up the Jihad stories. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, The Jin Jihad, The Test of the Scorpion, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
All right, here we are. Thank you guys for sticking in. If you did stick in, then welcome to the cool guy section of the podcast. This is a little bonus area. Usually, I'm trying to hold stuff back for this section. It's just for me and you, baby. It's just for me and you to talk. So, how liberals got lost on the story of missing children at the border, May 31st, 2018, by Amanda Taub, I guess, T-A-U-B, from the New York Times. Over the weekend, you may have seen a horrifying story. Almost 1,500 migrant children were missing and feared to be in the hands of human traffickers. You know, this part of the story is only like 3 years late, as we just read. The Trump administration lost track of the children, the story went, after separating them from their parents at the border. The news spread across liberal social media with the hashtag, "Where are the children?" trending on Twitter, as people demanded immediate action. But it wasn't true, or at least not the way that many thought. The narrative had combined two parts of real events and wound up with a horror story that was at least partly a myth. The fact that so many Americans readily believe this myth offers a lesson in how partisan polarization colors people's views on a gut emotional level without many even realizing it. As other articles have explained, the missing children and the Trump administration's separation of families who are apprehended at the border are two totally different matters. The Trump administration does, in fact, have a new policy of prosecuting all undocumented border crossers, which involves separating parents from their children. But 1,475 children, whom the Department of Health and Human Services recently reported it cannot locate, are not among those taken from their parents. These missing children had actually come to the United States without their parents, been picked up by the Border Patrol and then released to custodies of parents or guardians, or, as we just read, sponsors that were sometimes human traffickers. She leaves this part out of the article. Oh, maybe this won't be a short episode. Look at this. Many were probably... that was a real one. Many probably are not really missing. These figures represented by the numbers of children whose households didn't answer the phones when the Department of Health and Human Services called to check on them. Does anyone even have fucking house phones anymore? The unanswered phone calls may warrant further welfare checks, but are not themselves a sign that something nefarious has happened. The Obama administration also detained immigrant families and their children, as did other recent administrations. This past weekend, has some social media users circulated a photo they said showed children detained as a result of President Trump's policies, but the image was actually from 2014. Some waved off this seeming contradiction, saying that Mr. Trump's other harsh immigration policies had put this administration's actions in a different context. And it is true that even when using similar tactics, President Trump and President Obama have expressed a very different attitudes towards immigration and espoused different goals. These arguments underscore the degree to which this controversy is animated as much by attitudes towards the president and the way he has made immigration a focus of partisan conflict as by specific policy references. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. Detained immigrant children have frequently been caught up in the enforcement side of that bargain. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Immigration and Naturalization Services before it have argued that immigration detention is an essential part of enforcement and deterrence. That's the wall, is deterrence. And have vigorously pursued detention. Look, I spent a lot of my life being a security professional, and I'm like, everything is about deterrent. It's all about visual deterrence. That's what it is. Everything is about. That's why security cameras are huge, and you could see them from a mile away, because that's a visual deterrent. Like a wall would be a gigantic visual deterrent. Where was I? I went off on this rant and now... Oh, I skipped ahead. Okay. Have vigorously pursued detention of families and children throughout multiple presidential administrations. Immigrants' rights activists have brought a series of lawsuits that challenged and ultimately overturned many detention efforts, but those efforts did not reach the level of the national scandal that the Trump administration's policies have now. So what changed? Rising partisan polarization. We're going to skip ahead a little bit more. So it's not that the liberals don't care about immigrant children until Mr. Trump became president, or that they're only pretending to care now as to score political points. Rather, with the Trump administration making opposition to the immigrants a signature issue, the topic has become a salient to partisan conflict in a way that it wasn't before. Mr. Trump's treatment of immigrant families and children, when refracted through the lens of party bias, affirms liberal perceptions of being engaged in a broader moral struggle with the right, making it feel like an urgent threat, or Mr. Obama's detaining of immigrant children, by contrast, felt like a matter of abstract moral concern. Not like giving Mexican children over to slavers or human I'm sorry, I guess the politically correct term nowadays is human traffickers. Identity polarization means when you want to show that you're a good member of your tribe. This is virtue signaling. This is a hallmark of social justice warriors. Sean Westwood, a political scientist at Dartmouth College who studies partisan polarization. I would love to know what fucking textbook a guy who studies partisan polarization reads. What's in your curriculum, sir? This fucking clown said in an interview early last year, you want to show others that Republicans are bad and Democrats are bad and your tribe is good. Sharing stories on social media provides a unique opportunity to publicly declare to the world that your beliefs are and how willing you are to denigrate the opposition and reinforce your own political candidates, he said. And with that, I rest my fucking case. I've been John Towers. This has been the Abercast. This is an episode all about media, everybody. It's not politics, it's media. It's all media all the time, except for when it's Thelema, dark black magic, rocketry, Masonic, Goat Riders, I don't know, Nimrod and the Terrifying Angel. We have we paint with broad brushes here on the Ambercast. Anyhow, thank you guys. This is, as always, Soda Jerk with a song that I like. It's my favorite song. Not really, but I'll say that. It's my favorite song. It's called Fucking Fight. And thank you guys. I'll see you on the next regularly scheduled show, which is going to be next week. Like I said, this is just something I had to do. I fucking had to do it. I had to do it.
Well, I was just 14 when I had my first sip. And my darling whiskey, she tightened up her grip. And she made me sick that night. I knew that the whiskey would take up my life. Well, I stand a fool 2 inches below 5'9". And every guy here wants to take me alive. So I'll take a shot of whiskey and punch out their lights. The whiskey, it make me wanna fuck and fight. I fuck and fight, fuck and fight. The whiskey, it make me wanna fuck and fight. Well, every woman here up in this place, not even the crack of dawn is safe. So I'll take a shot of whiskey